Welcome, Bridge Builders, to another episode of the podcast. My name is Mitch, one of your co-hosts today. We have Juliet and I looked at you and said Juliet. Ashton and Juliet and Ashton in the studio with me today. My name is Mitch. I'm a former member of the church, now atheist. I left the church about 3 years ago.
I'm Juliet, and I'm inactive.
I'm also Juliet and very active. No, I'm Ashton, and I've been a member my whole life, and I'm very active in the church.
All right, and we're the Latter-day Bridge Builders, trying to build bridges in the community between former Latter-day Saints, active Latter-day Saints, and everyone in between, and even outside. So, thanks for joining us. If you haven't checked out our social media page, especially on Instagram, that's where we're most active. Please follow us there, and please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and if you're able to financially donate to the podcast, we really appreciate it. Today, we're doing another Tackling Cliché series of the podcast. We've done several of these. I'm trying to think if me and Garrett back in the day did one on this topic. I think we did. But again, that was like 4 years ago. So some things have changed in my own life and views and so forth. So come at this with some fresh eyes. The cliché we're going to talk about today is something called Doubt Your Doubts. And this comes from a talk from Dieter Uchtdorf, one of the current apostles, from the October 2013 conference. His talk is titled, "Come Join With Us." And just wanted to kind of give the whole quote in its context here. All right. It's natural to have questions. The acorn of honest inquiry has often sprouted and matured into a great oak of understanding. There are few members of the church who, at one time or another, have not wrestled with serious or sensitive questions. One of the purposes of the church is to nurture and cultivate the seed of faith, even in the sometimes sandy soil of doubt and uncertainty. Faith is to hope for things which are not seen but which are true. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, my dear friends, please doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. We must never allow doubt to hold us prisoner and keep us from the divine love, peace, and gifts that come through faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. I personally, going through a faith crisis, had this, not this exact quote, but the phrase "doubt your doubts" said to me, kind of thing, from a family member. And I don't know, at the time I didn't really think about it too much in either way, but it's just kind of like, can we talk about more? Like, it seemed like kind of like a thought stopping, maybe, I don't think intentionally, right, from this person, but it did just kind of like, oh, well, duh, you know? So, Ashton, I don't know what you...
Yeah, I would say there is some merit to this phrase, doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. But oftentimes, what I've experienced personally, maybe what I've given personally to other people, is this attitude of kind of like you're saying, the thought-stopping technique of like, well, let's just not talk about it, and you shouldn't think about it. So doubting your doubts, that can be a valid approach to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But doubting things that you have believed in or do believe in can have a lot of merit as well. And so the phrase "doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith," yeah, and for me, like, I would say as far as positioning goes, this phrase is spoken mostly to people who are in a probably more of an active position, maybe more like mine, right? And who's maybe things are a little more complicated than I realized. Do I need to rethink anything in how I approach my faith? And if it's allowed to doubt your faith after you have doubted your doubts, I think that's a reasonable phrase to use and to encourage people to consider. But when it is doubt your doubts and period, never doubt your faith, that's where it leads to that thought-stopping phrase or technique.
Yeah. One of the inspirations for this episode was a recent Exponent 2 article.
Exponent 2, subscribe, follow.
You write for them occasionally?
I do on occasion, once every other month.
Nice. what's the piece, article? What's the proper term? Blog post?
Blog post.
Blog post is by someone named Kelsey Sorensen. And she titled it, Doubt Your Doubts, : Is it actually good advice for LDS members? And I really liked this, and there was something that she said in here. Let me see if I can find it exactly. Swap in a more accurate word to many lived experiences, and the advice falls apart. I wouldn't call my experience doubts, but if I were to rephrase it more accurately, to more accurately reflect what it does feel like, doubt your concerns does not land the same way. Neither does doubt your legitimate questions or doubt the betrayal you feel about information you learned that wasn't part of the correlated curriculum. Not quite as pithy, that last one. But, the original framing subtly blames the person themselves rather than the information that prompted the question. And I really like the way she said that.
Yeah. I think, I agree, Ashton, that I think doubt your doubts is really reasonable in the sense of if you have everything pointing one direction and one thing pointing a different direction, then doubt that, right? It's I work in healthcare, right? Let's say we get a weird vital sign on somebody, right? Let's say that I'm taking care of a baby and the heart rate starts dinging and it tells me that the baby's in asystole, which means that the baby has no heartbeat. And the baby is screaming and crying, right? That's I'm that monitor is wrong. It's telling me one thing, but all of this other information is telling me, I'm going to doubt that, right? I need to change the leads. I need to switch out the monitor. I have enough information to doubt this piece of information, right? And so, I think that in the church, if there is one thing that challenges your belief in the setting of a bunch of other things that are affirming to that belief, then I think it makes perfect sense to take everything in context and doubt your doubts, right? Maybe let that thing go. Maybe it's not worth it if it's one small piece of information going one way when you have a bunch of stuff going a different way, which I recognize that that is the experience that a lot of people have, right? Their experience with their experiences and information in the church all is kind of pointing them one direction. And then they have one thing that's kind of a little bit unsettling. It's probably not worth it to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think that where the reason that someone who's in my position where this doesn't land quite right is, like you said, duh, right? Most people who get to the point of doubting their faith have been doubting their doubts for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I feel doubting your doubts is another way of putting something on the shelf. And when that shelf breaks is when you don't really have a choice anymore but to begin to doubt your faith. And so, honestly, I think it's fine advice to doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. But I think the way that phrase is usually actually communicated is only doubt your doubts.
And never doubt
your faith.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Which I don't think was his original.
No,
Uchtdorf is very progressive.
And that whole talk, he's usually progressive. He's usually someone who tends to be very gentle and inclusive. And I feel that whole talk really was about being gentle and inclusive with people. It's called Come Join Us.
Yeah.
He's probably the last church leader I would probably ever criticize. And I don't, so I think it's an interesting phrase that gets deployed that is not intrinsically bad or wrong, but gets deployed. I would agree with you, maybe both of you, about it being, I guess I don't have to choose one of you to agree with, about it being thought stopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thinking about, as far as joining a podcast, I'm going to meta communicate about what we're doing and apply this here. Cause it's I frequently have doubts about how I will show up here. Can I articulate myself? Will I embarrass myself? And I have doubts about my abilities. I think it's good advice to doubt my doubts in this regard before I doubt my faith or my confidence or my passion in these things that I believe in. Doubting my faith, So I think that really it can be very, very good and applicable advice to function in life. If we're constantly allowing our doubts to guide every action that we're considering, we will freeze, right? Well, for me, I feel like anxiety is something that I didn't realize I dealt a lot with, but I do now. And kind of this old adage of fear and courage. I can't remember how it goes. Like, courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward when fear is present. Something like that. And it's like, okay, I can recognize this fear. I can recognize this anxiety, and I can move forward. And this idea of doubting my insecurity and still being willing to show up and go into the arena, so to speak, can be really helpful advice just in functioning as a human. As I think we all, to some level, have doubts that maybe aren't meaningful. But that's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about the ones that have merit, the ones that have meaning today, I think.
Yeah.
At least often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you come across, I like what you said, just like all this information, medical analogy that you made, right? Because, yeah, for me, like, I had small doubts for a long time in the church growing up, and nothing really put me into a spiral or threw me into a faith crisis necessarily, but it wasn't until, like, I had a very strong, like, completely opposite experience with the church in a way that all of a sudden, like, more things started to point in a different direction for me, that I couldn't just ignore every single one of them, kind of thing. And the shelf broke, so to speak. So it's a decent analogy. So yeah, when this family member, like, said that to me, I'm sure it was well intentioned. I'm sure it was, you know, like, they probably had never dealt with anything like this in their own life up until that point. And maybe still haven't, I don't know. But it made me feel like, well, I can't talk about anything that I actually have a concern with you necessarily, or with anyone in the church for that matter. Like, where am I supposed to turn for information on this subject? Like, there are some websites that do it a little bit, but most of the apologist type websites are like, this is a reason why you should doubt your doubt. Let's move on to the next one, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very few places are like letting you grapple with that and like, oh, well, what does that mean? And can you still find room for faith in that necessarily? Like, which is what, I don't know, I feel like we're trying to do here a little bit more, is let people wrestle with it, let people come to their own conclusions, not judge people for where they end up in or out of the church. So yeah, as I talked to like more former members of the church through my faith crisis, I just felt like a lot of love and compassion, and like, you know, I don't think anybody told me to leave, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
But I had plenty of members of the church tell me like, oh, well, you'll get there eventually. You'll come back. You'll XYZ, whatever. Like, or if you do step away, just make sure you don't become bitter, you know, kind of like these kind of terms and languages.
Be the good kind of.
Yeah, be the good kind of Ex-Mormon. That's not bagging us all the time.
That's not a nuisance and doesn't challenge us.
Exactly, because that makes me uncomfortable and so forth. So yeah, it's not my goal to like tear someone's faith away, but I'm also not going to hide them from tough things, you know? I don't know. It's a hard thing to balance. And I've discussed that with you guys on different topics for the episodes and so forth. But
yeah, I remember when I used to write, like when people would say things in church that I really liked, I'd like scribble them in my scriptures. And when I was teaching seminary back in the day, one of the in-service instructors, I remember him saying to us, never plant doubt. And that day I had been taking notes with a bright pink ballpoint pen. And at the front of my scriptures on one of the blank pages, I wrote in tall capital letters that I had to go over like a few times because it was like a skinny bright pink pen, you know, the words never plant doubt. And I mean, this is a little bit tangential, but I And so I like went into teaching seminary with that, like, no matter what you say, no matter what you teach, do not plant a single seed that could cause somebody to question. And now it's like, ooh, what is it that I don't want people to question? It's like, do you not want people to question themselves, to question Jesus Christ, to question the history of the church, to question the authority of the church? But like, really, I was trying to not let any of my students question any of that. And it began to feel like a little oppressive, especially as I ran into saying things that I was like doubting myself, that was like not making sense. But I just felt like I absolutely could not say or do anything that would cause anybody to doubt anything, which is like, we don't know what's going to cause other people to doubt, right? That's not really, that's not a fair thing to tell somebody. Don't ever plant doubt. Like, okay.
You could say the most faithful thing ever, and that would land good for someone, and someone else would take issue with it for whatever reason, right?
But it really just made me, I don't know, I guess it made me feel like I really couldn't like be genuine, you know? Like it was for sure more important that I was falling in line,
loyal, maybe,
that I was loyal, than that I was genuine. 100%. Me being genuine, that I don't want to say that was never important, but it wasn't. But there were spaces where it wasn't that important to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have something?
I definitely have something.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to formulate it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I'm getting anxious now that I'm going to talk. But I will continue forward.
Doubt that doubt.
I will doubt that doubt.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to doubt when you have reason to doubt. If that makes sense. Like if there's evidence that points, kind of like you were saying with the monitors and like and your experience and all of that, it's like there are reasonable times to doubt, and that's a good human quality that we have within our brains and our hearts, or however it all interacts. That's a positive thing, whether it's for self-preservation, whether it's for again, like I said, functioning in life, or adjusting things in life to function better. And I guess I want to just interrupt myself and just for any of the audience members, or maybe some of my family members that may watch this, who wonder where I'm at as far as my faith. And I'm not going to go into too many specifics just because I feel like...
Remember, we can cut anything out.
Sure.
Including what I just said.
Yeah. The point that I'm trying to make is I feel like after I have doubted my doubts and then doubted my faith, I feel like my faith has not diminished, but it has definitely changed a lot. My view is that it's matured a lot, and I would say that my faith is stronger than it used to be, because it's not a childlike, simplistic faith, but it's more mature and measured and refined and tried, I guess you could say. It's been through the fire of a lot of things. So my faith, I feel, is stronger than it used to be, even though I have doubted my faith throughout the years and in various ways and various degrees. And my belief in principles of compassion, principles of respecting other people, even though we might disagree, kind of like we're trying to practice here. My belief in those things, and in many of the teachings of Jesus and the example of Jesus that I've shared before, like my belief in those things are stronger than they've ever been. And I don't think that had I not doubted my faith, that it could have matured and grown into the faith that I have at this point in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great. It's kind of like what you said, like fear is not courage is not the absence of fear. I think that also faith is not the absence of doubt,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point.
And there might be, I hear some people in ex-Mormon spaces kind of maybe would hear that and say, well, you're just like putting your head in the sand, right? If you still choose to believe in this thing, even though you like know all the issues with it. I think that maybe can be the case in some times and places, but we truly don't know exactly like what someone thinks and believes and feels. And I'd rather give the benefit of the doubt that someone can still have like you said, a mature version of faith that is able to hold different things and perhaps change views, but that doesn't mean you have to leave the church, right? Or
stay.
Or yeah, like you can be where you are, and that's fine with me, So you heard it here. Ex-Mormon says he can stay in the church.
You have permission.
You have my permission.
And if you don't want to go to the church, can you give, as the Elders Quorum president, can you give permission to people out of the church to stay out of the church?
I will, as the individual Ashton who holds a position, I will give my personal opinion. I think in our last episode we talked about paths of righteousness. We can recognize, each of us here, and I think any person who's willing to be introspective can recognize our limitations of perspective and of future telling. We can't predict the future individually or collectively with very good accuracy. Like when we look at our track record as human people, including religious people, oftentimes our track record, we have a hard time telling the future, is what I'm saying. Yeah. We don't know where we're going to be next year. We don't know where we're going to be. I mean, in extreme cases, within days or weeks, and we're all on our different paths, and I can respect, and I can even encourage people learning for themselves where they fit, and I've learned so much. Speaking now as an Elders Quorum president, I've learned so much from hearing perspectives of those that are outside of my church, and that has helped me show up better inside my church, knowing stories and perspectives of my friends that are outside.
Cool.
The end.
The end. You make an end of your speech.
Yeah. I guess my one wish and hope is that there can be more spaces where people can wrestle with these things, right? Yeah. Whether that's in church, out of church, I don't know. But I think if members of the church really want people to stay, I think it needs to evolve to be able to handle these conversations within the walls of the church, even if it's just a side conversation in the hallway, Yeah. But yeah, that's what I wish I would have had maybe as I was stepping away. But any last words from anyone?
Nope.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode of Latter-day Bridge Builders. And remember to like, subscribe, share, follow us on our social medias, and make a donation if you can. We really appreciate that. So
we won't use it for coffee.
We'll use it to produce this thing. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.